Hi, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Good News Conversations here on the Albuquerque Journal Podcast Network. I'm your host, Good News reporter Gino Gutierrez, joined this week by PGA professional and golf coach out of Porta del Sol Golf Course, Todd Kersting. Todd, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Gino.
And Todd, you were a subject of a recent feature that we did in the Good News column, and we covered basically your relationship with golf and how you've really turned your love for the game into offering a safe space and really a sanctum for a lot of people here in Albuquerque. But before we get to that, I really want to retrace our steps all the way to the beginning and how you really fell in love with the game of golf.
Well, I fell in love when I chipped in during a junior golf camp, my first week that I was learning golf. And there was a kid behind me at Los Altos, chipping green. And he said, anybody chips it in, I'll buy him a Pepsi. And I was fortunate to chip the ball in. And I, what I call, got that dopamine rush. And I was excited. And it's like, hey, that was fun. And I'd like to do more. So that kind of opened the doors to where I wanted to learn more about playing the game of golf. And what comes to mind that I try to tell my golfers of all ages, that nobody in my family played golf. And so I was fortunate to buy we didn't have a lot of money, but I was able to get a Patty Berg 8-iron and a Sam Snead putter. And I still have the Sam Snead putter. And I would go on the weekends and use the putting green at Los Altos golf course as my own little playground, really. And nobody was telling me I couldn't do it. However, I felt a little bit intimidated because I was putting amongst all these adults. So I thought I was infringing on their territory. And, you know, I found out that my mom and dad paid taxes. So it's like, I'm allowed to come to this public course. But at the time, it just felt like I was not supposed to be there, but I was having a ball and I just stayed in my lane, kind of my lane. I mean, I would be walking over other people's lines and I didn't know it then, but I could still visualize making these long putts and then I would walk it off and I would run home and tell my mom, hey, I made a 35-footer, you know, and it felt like a hole-in-one to me. But I just went every weekend to get my mind away from golf and to have fun. And my parents, they were going through a divorce at that time. And so it was kind of an escape for me. So it worked out well. And I see that with the golfers that I coach too.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned how nobody in your family played golf.
Yeah.
You were really not supposed to play golf either. I remember you mentioning your mom had you in tennis lessons.
Yeah.
You told me that you were supposed to be a tennis professional, not a golfer, until one day when you were shagging tennis balls and you looked across I-40 and you saw Los Altos golf course.
Yeah. As I peel away the layers, the week prior, I was in my tennis clinics and they call a timeout for us to go shag all the tennis balls. And I pick up the tennis balls, and I had about eight balls on there. And I got up to stretch, and I looked over, and I can still visualize the golfers. And back then they had 3-wheeled golf carts. And I just looked back at my tennis racket, and I looked back and I said, that's the game that I'm very interested in learning. And went home, broke the news to my mom. And I give her credit. She called and signed me up for a golf clinic. And the next week, I was getting coached by a PGA pro, Billy Moya, senior. And yeah, kind of, I would say the rest is history in that regards. And I will mention that not having parents or relatives playing golf, I didn't have anybody there that kind of pushed me to get better at golf and learn golf. And sometimes I've noticed that growing up, helping juniors, where their parents tend to push them so much. And the kids sometimes can get burned out by the time they're 13, 14 years old. So I try to mention that to parents to make it their idea, make it fun, to where they'll want to come back and play. And then when it's fun, then they're going to want to learn more about the skills in the game of golf. So,
and it was with juniors that you got your start teaching golf.
Yeah.
In the 1980s, you mentioned that you were started instructing juniors at Arroyo del Oso golf course. And really, the driving force for you for that was twofold. It was the fact that the other pros just didn't have time for the juniors, and the fact that you were really passionate about sharing the love you felt for the game of golf with these kids.
Yeah, I was counter help at the Arroyo del Oso golf course, and Tony Hidalgo did his group class for that summer, and Ross Nettles, he was another pro. And as I was working the counter, I got all these phone calls from parents wanting to sign their kids up for junior lessons. So I went to one of my two great mentors. Yeah, I talked to you about your mentors before, and it was Bob Myring and Guy Wimberly. And I was very fortunate to work under them because they were they were icons in our golf profession, and I just happened to work under them. And Bob Myring, bless his heart, he said, "Yeah, we'll let you. Yeah, go ahead." And they wanted to make the parents happy, so it's like, yeah. And so I started classes, but Bob Myring, he was okay. You could teach, but just check in. And it's like, hey, I didn't care. And so I checked in for the first 2 years. And after that third year, then I was able to start making a little bit more of an income with the charging, a small fee for the junior golf. But that's how I got started. And what I remembered from my clinic with Billy Moya Sr. is that summer in 1974, he signed a certificate of accomplishment. And I'll just never forget when he signed his name. And I went home and it's like, wow, I accomplished something. And I wanted to give I get a little bit emotional about it in a good way, where I made out certificates when I started teaching, because I knew how important that was for me. And then I would take their picture. I would run down. I'd go down to the nearest, the Fox. What is that? They had these print shops that you can get your pictures developed.
Yeah.
And then I would get them back the next day, and then I would laminate them that night, and then I would give them to the students on Thursday. And I just loved how excited they were. And what ended up happening is they went home. I'll call it, hung it up on their refrigerator. And then before you knew it, when parents went to go visit these other parents that had their kids in the junior classes, it became a talking point where they said, "Hey, what's that certificate all about?" And they said, "Well, that was Coach Todd at Arroyo." Mm-hmm. So then their parents would call me, and before you knew it, it just grew very quickly. I was just happy to give the kids the same feeling that I got.
And that's how you got your teaching career started. You've continued it all these years later. Now you're a PGA pro and a golf coach out of Puerto del Sol by the airport. But the one thing that has stuck with you, Todd, and you mentioned it through our numerous conversations we had, is your joy for helping other people find their passion or maybe even an escape through the game of golf. What is it about this sport that is able to help people take their minds off of maybe the stresses they have on a daily basis and, escape to the golf course for a couple of hours and just, kind of let all of those worries kind of melt away?
Yeah, Gino, this game, you'll never master it, but you'll certainly try to. Mm-hmm. And golfers hit that one great shot, and then they chase it. It's like, I want to get that feeling, kind of like what I did when I chipped in.
Yeah.
And so they come up to the range, they're practicing, and they're visualizing like more of those good shots. And they're on the range. I call the range kind of like a lab where they're kind of mixing their potions and their ingredients to try to find that secret. And the game requires not just physical ability with being semi-coordinated, but mentally and emotionally. So there's all these elements that keep you busy. So when you go play golf, what I love is you don't have time to think about anything else in life. That little white golf ball is going to be talking to you, as you're aware of, because I've seen your swing. It's very good. And it doesn't move. So it's like, how hard can it be? And then once you try, then you go down that rabbit hole of trying to figure out how to hit it straighter, farther. And it's just an ongoing journey that we take as golfers to get better. And like I say, you'll never master it, but you're going to definitely spend a lot of time trying to.
Yeah, it's, I've often equated golf, it's the, like you said, it's the chase of perfection in an imperfect game, because you're never going to be, even professionals still hit the ball a lot of the time.
Yeah, great point. Where I have to now, when I talk to my clients, I have to peel away more layers and say, what do you do for a living? What other hobbies have you done? Because if they're kind of very successful with their business, their day-to-day business, then golf can be very humbling to where they think, well, I'll just pay Coach Todd more money and I'll be good by the end of the month.
Yeah.
Because when you throw money at a business outside of golf, you can grow your business a lot of times. However, there's other challenges that they soon realize when they're trying to hit that ball that doesn't move, which by the way, I want to make sure that I let people that are listening to this podcast that all you need, like I am fortunate, all you need is one golf club or two golf clubs like I got started. And as long as you can throw the ball, I tell my clients, hey, just blame it on Coach Todd. When you throw the ball after you miss it 3 times, I call them foul balls. Because it's very, very important to have self-talk that's positive.
Yeah.
And I say foul ball, and you get to throw it, because there is some research that I found that if you give somebody 3 attempts, they increase the probability of making contact. It's people, a lot of times they're visualizing, oh, coach, like, oh, and they're up there and they're visualizing missing the ball over and over and over. And that's what creates the inner anxiety. So if I tell them you get to throw it after 3 attempts, they relax. And if they throw it, they just turn and say, "Hey, Coach Todd, 362-4148, you can call him, and he'll explain." So I let people start off with just one or two clubs. You throw it after 3 misses. I have other rules, or I don't like the word rules, but guidelines. So I tell them to throw it. And then I also mentioned, when you learn golf, people are not going to go to your pitch and putt course that I started off with at Los Altos. Mm-hmm. They're going to go, "Oh, you bought some clubs? Well, we got an opening this weekend. We have room for a 4th. Come join us." "Oh, no. I'm just learning." No, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
And then your friends, family and friends, you go out to the bigger golf course and you're just beginning. And what happens very often is you tee off from the back tees. And by the 4th hole, you're exhausted, you're tired, your hands are starting to get blistery, and you're going, "Okay, this is supposed to be fun." And then how many more holes do we have left?
Yeah.
So you can tee off from the putting green and just start with your family and friends. I just want you out there.
Yeah.
Joining your family and friends, because that's what, to me, it's all about, to have a social interaction with your family and friends. So start off near the putting green, and I say, find your distance to get the ball in the hole in 5 shots or less. And if you can do that consistently, then you can move back another 50 yards. And on average, most people start off at 100 yards, a football field.
Yeah.
And then they can see the flag. As the late Robin Williams would say, they put a flag there, to give you hope. And you can see the end result. And so you're more motivated to get the ball in the hole because you can see the finish line.
Yeah.
It's when you're 400 yards away, you're getting overwhelmed. And it's very important that we don't overwhelm people when they learn the game of golf.
Yeah, because it is a very complex game.
Yeah.
You have given roughly over 26,000 golf lessons in your career, which is mind-boggling when you say it out loud. But you've helped a who's who. You've helped Alex Bregman. You've helped a lot of different individuals that have gone on. You've helped the current Isotopes hitting coach.
Yeah.
But one thing, Todd, I really want to focus on is something that has been near and dear to your heart, and that's first responders in Albuquerque.
Yeah.
And you have really gone out of your way to help that community, to help recruit more individuals to be first responders in the city, given a lot of lessons to first responders in Albuquerque. And that has a very, very intimate and deep meaning for you. And I was hoping, as much as you're comfortable sharing, just telling our listeners a little bit about that.
Yeah, I've always been... I've always had like a closeness. I've always had I've always enjoyed our first responders for years. I was part of the community policing councils that are here in town. I was on the board for 5 to 6 years for the Southeast. And so I was doing my part to help grow our city through the, back then it was it had come to me, but, so I was part of the community policing council and actually helped them design the logo, the CPC logo, and then my brother-in-law ended up getting murdered out front of Giovanni's Pizzeria, and Station 11 down the street, the paramedics came and they tried to save him, and he was unfortunately too far gone. And the police showed up thanks to what's called Shot Tracker, and which I'm a proponent for Shot Tracker. And they quickly got to the Giovanni's Pizzeria, and they were able to locate the individual. And the trial's coming up in October. And the first responders, the fire and rescue, which if you want to be one, cabq.gov/fire, or a police person is apdonline.com. And I'm trying to grow more individuals to consider that a career choice, because my my nephew is a fireman at Station 13, Chris Hawthorne. And when I go over and visit him at the fire station, there's such a bond. There's a inner community, kind of like you all have here. And the police departments that I've been have visited, they have a community. So there's these great communities that people can be a part of, and all they have to do is apply online and definitely work on your pull-ups and your stamina with running, and you could be a part of two great organizations in our city. Mm-hmm. And I saw them at work when my brother-in-law got killed, including the new Albuquerque, there's the new one, Community Safety Department. And so there's all these wonderful people that are out there, and the fire and rescue, they have like 777 members. I want to get them, I visualize, I'm very visual. I want to get them over 1,000 someday. And then our APD's at, I think, 948, and I'd like to get them upwards, not just to 1,100, but 1,200. Mm-hmm. So I want to kind of make the bar higher, because I feel you shoot for the moon, you'll kind of be amongst the stars. So I'm just trying to be a cheerleader for people that are in high school that are listening to this, or even younger. And that's why I give you all some red and blue golf balls. It's just to imprint that images of fire and rescue and APD. But teenagers coming out of high school can become part of the training for both departments, or out of college, or a lot of military go into the first responders. So it's a great career, and I just want to get the word out to consider it as you're entering that age of looking at, hey, what do I want to be? And I love the stories that I hear about and personally saw, because I graduated from what's called the Citizens Police Academy, the 50th class. And I was able to meet everybody that came in from all the departments of APD. And the stories were amazing. And so I want people to hear more of those stories, which may be an idea for you all, to where they have their reasons to get into the first responders, and they have families. Mm-hmm. And they're a big part of our community. So anyway, they're close to my heart.
And last question for you, Todd. We've mentioned a couple times how golf can be a sanctuary for people. It's a place for them to get their minds off of things. You mentioned something to me that was pretty powerful after your brother-in-law, Rosario, was murdered outside of his pizzeria shop. You went and taught your golf lessons the next day. And you mentioned to me how, that was actually very helpful for you. Golf, you've spent your life and your career making golf a sanctuary for other people. How has it been a sanctuary for you?
Yeah, thank you, Gino. When something like that happens, there's so many things out of your control. But the one thing in my control was I had people that were looking forward to their lesson the next day, and it helped me to focus on my next day's lessons. And when I got out there, I kind of go into a zone when I coach and when I teach, and I start figuring out how can I help you hit that little white ball better. And so I get lost. I go down that good rabbit hole to where, as I try to help you enjoy the game, I'm not able to think about anything else. So that was very good therapy for me. And I realize that therapy is good for all people that play the game or want to learn the game, where, when I talk to people who have struggled that day or week with their job, is like, hey, for the next hour, the one thing I will tell you, you're not going to have time to think about anything that has been a struggle for you, and that includes, people that I've coached that have challenges with substance abuse, and it just helps them get through that next hour or that next day. So it's been very good therapy for me. I feel it, and I want to just share that feeling with everybody that crosses my path when I'm out on the golf course.
Fantastic. Todd, thank you so much. We headlined our article that you were changing lives one golf lesson at a time, and it really has seemed like it's had that kind of impact. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. You can find this episode and all our podcasts on the Albuquerque Journal website, abqjournal.com, as well as on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, and SoundCloud. If you enjoy our podcasts, please like and subscribe, and consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Albuquerque Journal to help us continue to bring you more content like this. See the show notes for a discount on a digital subscription. Thank you for supporting the Albuquerque Journal, New Mexico's leading local news source.